Hi there, everybody. Jeff Dinlick here at Their Curious World, bringing you another story of the mysterious, the unexplained, and the just plain weird. Today we're going to do something a little different. No ghosts, no UFOs, no Bigfoot, nothing about reincarnation, bizarre historical coincidences, or lost history. Today we're just going to have some fun. And what could be more fun than palindromes? For those unfamiliar with the term, the palindrome is a word or a series of words that read exactly the same backwards as they do forwards. In case you're interested, it comes from the Greek words palin, which means again, and dromos, which means way or direction. Just thought you'd want to know that. A few examples are words like radar, kayak, civic, rotor, race car. And they can also be found in common names like Eve, Hannah, Otto, let's not forget Bob. But none of that is particularly remarkable, especially in smaller words. They get more interesting when you start creating complete sentences, such as Madam, I'm Adam. 3 words and 11 letters. The sentence, however, has to make sense even if it's nonsense, as we will see below. Before proceeding, however, it's important to understand what isn't a palindrome. It's not just rewriting the same words in reverse order, such as you see here in this example. While all for one and one for all would seem to qualify, backwards it reads lor often odne oinor ofla, making it just a jumble of letters. With a true palindrome, it must read exactly the same, backwards or forwards, letter by letter. For example, race car is still read as race car when you read it backwards, making it a true palindrome. They are even better when they have a double meaning, such as is the case with the word evil, which, when spelled backwards, reads live or live. Also, with palindromes, the spacing between the words doesn't matter, nor does punctuation such as commas and apostrophes. To use our earlier example, Madam, I'm Adam, notice that when we have to add the M from I'm and delete the space between I'm and Adam to create Madam. Then it's simply a matter of taking the last M from the word Madam, combining it with the I, and moving the apostrophe between them. And voila! Madam, I'm Adam magically appears once again, but this time backwards. What could be simpler than that? Well, probably lots of things, but stay with me here. Finally, we're only dealing with palindromes in English, which should play havoc with YouTube's auto-dubbing feature, I think. Of course, there are probably palindromes in other languages too, but since I'm only familiar with those in English, I leave it to my multilingual listeners out there to devise their own list. Okay, so let's see how this works with slightly longer sentences. Here's one for you. Step on no pets. Here's 4 words, 12 letters, which is, not only sound advice, but notice in this case, you don't even need to change the spacing, making it an almost perfect palindrome. Obviously, things start getting more difficult the more words you have, which is when the real fun begins. Here's a 6-word, 13-letter palindrome. Was it a rat I saw? Which is one you might make use of if you live in a really low rent apartment. Notice that you can also substitute cat or bat for rat, making it several palindromes in one, as well as being useful in a number of circumstances or living conditions. Palindromes can even be theological in nature, such as, do geese see God? Which is a question certainly worthy of pondering, especially if you have an affinity for our feathered friends and worry about their eternal fate. Also reminds me of an old adage having to do with horses that I feel compelled to modify here. If geese had gods, one imagines their gods would look much like geese. Here's another theological musing for you. A Satan lived as a devil at Nassau, which not only explains some things going on at NASA of late, but it also has the additional advantage of appealing equally to devil worshippers, space enthusiasts, and son-of-buffs alike. Now, if there's only some way to work it into a conversation. Further examples of palindromes with eternal ramifications are Dennis and Edna sinned. We do not know which way they sinned, though we might venture a guess, but I suspect they can take care of that at confessional. On a lighter note, we have God Save Eva's Dog, which should warm the heart of any theistic pet lover. Moving away from religion, it's interesting how many palindromes have to do with animals. For example, there's the classic Mr. Owl ate my metal worm, which, while unfortunate, is something that is likely to happen if you leave your metal worm out where owls can get to them. On a darker note, we have Eva, can I stab bats in a cave? Which should serve to remind us once again of the importance of asking permission before going bat hunting in caves. Though it doesn't really explain what exactly qualifies Eva to make that determination, and further, if she is the same Eva whose dog was saved by God. There's also a variation on this with Eva, can I see bees in a cave, which seems to be a less violent option. In keeping with our animal theme, we also have the immortal, was it a car or a cat I saw? Which shouldn't be all that hard to determine considering their very different appearance. And finally, there's the slightly disturbing and probably illegal acrobats stab orcas, which probably explains why orcas tend to shy away from acrobats. Palindromes can also be used in reference to food. We have no lemons, no melons, probably as a result of the government's crackdown on undocumented migrant farm workers, along with a nut for a jar of tuna, which came as a surprise to me as I'd never seen tuna sold in jars before. And finally, there is the impressive, go hang a salami, I'm a lasagna hog, which obviously harkens back to the great salami lasagna wars of the 19th century. Palindromes can also take on a decidedly historical bent as well, such as the now renowned A Man, a Plan, a Canal, Panama, which is a classic penned in 1948 by Lee Mercer, a British writer who enjoyed coming up with palindromes and spoonerisms. What makes it unique is that it actually makes sense. It would even work as the title of a book about the construction of the Panama Canal, making it one of the better ones out there. Unfortunately, the title would probably be the high point of the book, one imagines. Unless we forget, there's also the historic Able was I, ere I saw Elba, which refers to Napoleon's exile to the island of Elba in 1815, making this palindrome just history disguised as fun. There's also a few other little gems out there to consider, such as the introspective Ma is as selfish as I am. Apparently it's a genetic thing. And the always inspirational Rise to Vote, Sir, made famous on a Simpsons episode. And the always contentious borrow or rob, a question I always ask myself when I try to decide whether I should borrow my neighbor's tools or just simply steal them. And who could ever forget this immortal bit of nonsense? Neither odd or even. I mean, it has to be one or the other, doesn't it? And I guess palindromes don't have to be true to work. So what is the longest palindrome out there? I found a few that seem to qualify. First, there's the pedestrian gateman sees name, garageman sees name tag, which unfortunately begs the question of just what a garageman is. Then there's the ominous clover, if alive, erupts a vast pure evil, a fire volcano. 12 words and 45 letters, all designed to warn us of the danger living clover poses to our planet, lest we forget, I guess at our peril. Of course, this isn't the longest palindrome I have found. That honor goes to, and are you ready for this? Doc, note, I dissent. A fast never prevents a fatness. I diet on cod. 14 words and 52 letters. Too bad it isn't medically accurate, though, as fast really will prevent fatness. Probably more so than dieting on cod would. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this little romp into the exciting world of palindromes and will be inspired to entertain your friends and families, and especially those coworkers that annoy you the most, with these little gems. I guarantee they will never forget you, and will probably even thank you profusely for regaling them with your knowledge of reversible words. Also, if you can think of any really cool palindromes I might have missed here, shoot me one in comments, and if I get enough of them, maybe I'll make another video. So if you like this video, I'd really appreciate you hit that like button and consider subscribing to see more stories like this from our curious world. And don't forget, Palindrome spelled backwards is E Morid Nilap. It's kind of sad if you think about it. Until next time, this is Jeff Delic signing out. Bye.